Welcome to my review of the Cosmic Fantasy RPG series, a series that is long forgotten. It came out in the early 90s on the PC Engine, came out on the TurboGrafx as Cosmic Fantasy 2. We only got one of them over here. And I gotta say, I've wanted to talk about this series for the last 11 years. When I first came onto YouTube, I was like, I have to talk about Cosmic Fantasy. It is such an interesting RPG series. Now, I gotta say, this series review would not be possible without my good friend in Japan, Guy Gillionaire. And I gotta say, he wrote the script, he captured a lot of footage, he supplied a lot of the information on this series, and I can't thank him enough, but I think we can all thank him by subscribing to his channel down below. And he does a lot of really interesting videos on Japanese video games, but also on Japanese pop culture. So definitely go and check out his channel. Give him some support for bringing this series review to light. I can't thank him enough. And something else to look forward to near the end of the video, I go to Hawaii in search of the long-lost, forgotten arcade Cosmic Fantasy from the early 90s. I go on a search to go and find it and see if it is still there. But without further ado, let's get into the series review. Back in the good days when games were booming in Japan, Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy had set up a gold rush of role-playing games trying to be the next big thing. Telenet Japan and its subsidiary, Lasersoft, got into the game as well. The company had already had hit games, most notably the Valis series. Valis set itself apart from other games of the time by delivering full animated cutscenes and voiceovers on CD-ROM, which was new at that time. In 1989, Telenet began development of a new RPG that would deliver a similar experience. It would feature dungeon crawling and turn-based combat, but offer a more immersive experience using animation, voice acting, and scored music to bring the game to life. At the time, it was as close as you could get to playing an anime movie. To complete the experience, the top voiceover artists from the world of anime were brought in to provide voices for the characters. Actors from popular 1980s and 90s anime shows such as Ranma, Dragon Ball, and Zillion would make appearances in the Cosmic Fantasy universe. The first game released in 1990 was Cosmic Fantasy: The Adventures of You. The plot revolves around You, known in English as Cobra, joining an elite intergalactic police force known as the Cosmic Hunters. He is joined by Seiya, also known as Seo in English, and a talking cat called Nyan, along with other colorful characters. One of the missions of the Cosmic Hunters is to help protect planets who have yet to develop modern technology from evil. The second game, Cosmic Fantasy 2: The Adventures of Van, was released in Japan in 1991. The hero of the game is a young boy named Van who discovers that his childhood sweetheart, Laura, is secretly a princess. In a quest for immortality, she is kidnapped by the evil Galen. The game doesn't seem to have much connection to the first one on the surface, but halfway through, Van meets up with Cobra, Seo, Babette, and Pico. And Van eventually becomes a Cosmic Hunter himself. The game was released in English in 1992 by Working Designs. By the end of the 90s, Working Designs had established themselves as the leader of the niche market of RPG localization. But this was the company's first venture into RPGs and CD-ROMs. The game was a major success for the TurboGrafx CD, quickly becoming the best-selling game for the system, having an attach rate of almost 100%. It was so popular that there were plans to replace Gate of Thunder with Cosmic Fantasy 2 as the pack-in title for the new Turbo Duo system. The plan never happened though, as the original manufactured lot of 20,000 units never sold through. In Japan, however, Telenet was back with Cosmic Fantasy 3: The Adventures of Lei, released in Japan in 1992. The game follows Lei as he learns about his mysterious magical powers. He joins the Cosmic Hunters after a chance encounter with Nyan, who's hiding from some wicked cats who are out to get him. All of the characters from the first 2 games meet up again. The game is actually a prequel, as Lei meets the Cosmic Hunters after Yu travels to Lei's world with a time machine. The game was issued on Super CD-ROM, which allowed for more memory, which meant bigger and longer animated scenes, larger maps, and room for more characters. The game was planned for localization by Working Designs in 1994. There are actually some messages about Cosmic Fantasy III coming soon, mentioned in-game in Cosmic Fantasy II. The game was near 100% completion when TTI, the company now in charge of the TurboGrafx and Turbo Duo in the US, closed down. With no place to market the game, it was sadly cancelled, and English audiences would never enjoy Lei's adventure. Despite that, Cosmic Fantasy was popular in Japan. Cosmic Fantasy IV was getting ready for release in 1994. During production, the game grew so large it was split into 2 parts, with Cosmic Fantasy IV Chapter 1 Galactic Adventures Prelude to a Legend. Released first in summer 1994, that game's story is based on the adventures of Cobra and Seo. Cobra must search for the kidnapped princess of Kazarian, while Seo impersonates the princess until she's rescued. The plot expands though, as Cobra comes face to face with demons who threaten the existence of the whole galaxy. Cosmic Fantasy IV Chapter 2 Galactic Adventures The Light from Deep Space was released in late 1994. The game stars Van and Babette. Van returns to his home planet to face the demons of his past and save the galaxy along the way. Because of Van's time slip in Cosmic Fantasy II, he interacts with characters 20 years older than his first adventure. Now I gotta admit, it would have been great to get this game released in English, as Western audiences who played Cosmic Fantasy II would be familiar with the characters and scenes in the game. Cosmic Fantasy IV Chapter 2 gives finality to some events in that game, but it just wasn't meant to be. Aside from that, there were 2 other releases. One was called Cosmic Fantasy Visual Collection, which was a compilation of all the cutscenes from the first 2 games, as well as Cosmic Fantasy Stories, released for the Mega CD, which is a port of the first 2 games with some minor improvements. There may never be a Cosmic Fantasy V, as Telenet eventually fell on hard times and was eventually acquired by Sunsoft, but the legacy of the Cosmic Fantasy series is still held in high regard and deserves a place right next to Final Fantasy and Phantasy Star. Such an interesting series, and I'm still so bummed we never got all of the rest of them. It's so frustrating, and it's just one of those RPG series I always wanted to talk about. I was like, this is so cool and so Japanese, and so many people don't know about it, and that's why I want to bring some light to it today. Next up, now I'm going to go over to Hawaii, yes, from here to Hawaii, to go and search for a long-lost arcade called Cosmic Fantasy. I first heard about this arcade from my friend Chris Tang, the Sega World Champion. He used to live in Hawaii and go to this arcade, and he's like, yeah, you gotta go and see if it's still there, see if there's any remnants of it. So I decided to go and do that. So here I am in beautiful Waikiki, and there's a legend out there that Chris Tang, the Sega World Champion, told me about, that there's an arcade called Cosmic Fantasy. It used to be here in the very early 90s, and we're gonna go and see if it's still there. I don't know, I have no idea, so let's go have a look. So before we go into this journey into the past, my wife printed this out for me right here. This is a map that they gave out back in the day to find the original Cosmic Fantasy arcade, and we're gonna use the original map from 26 years ago to go and find this place. Obviously, it won't still be around. I think it disappeared in like 1993, but we'll be able to find the building and see if there's any remnants of that old arcade. Okay, we're much closer now than we were before. This is quite the trek to find an arcade from 26 years ago and to see what remnants are still there to this day. So this is beginning to remind me of looking for Al Capone's vault. We all remember what a huge disappointment that was. So my hopes are not up to find anything exciting at all. I really don't think we will find anything exciting, but we're journeying back 26 years ago to find an old video arcade called Cosmic Fantasy, based on a Japanese RPG series. How cool is that? Okay, I had to take a little bit of a break. I feel bad for Kim. She's bringing the camera. She's filming right now. We're a little tired, a little sweaty. This has been a lot more of a walk than we originally thought. Some homeless person just pointed us in the right direction, so we want to definitely thank him. So we're on the trek. We're about, I say about like 10 minutes away, so we're getting there, honestly. And then we came across it. We found the old location of the arcade. What we're going up right now, back in 1992, this is how you would get to the Cosmic Fantasy Arcade. This is the escalator that would go up. This is the round part right here. This is from the pictures that they had. I was like, but it's a grocery store now. So there's no arcade games, there's no fun, there's nothing like that here. There's just a grocery store. But you know what? We're here where it used to be, which is fantastic. And at one time, this was a really cool place to go. To win little prizes and to have a little bit of fun. Unbelievable. Well, I did say it was going to be like Al Capone's vault. I didn't promise you the world. I just promised you a look back into the past of where this arcade used to be in 1992, 26 years ago. Sadly, the arcade is no longer there, but it is immortalized in scans done by Chris Tang. And I can't thank him enough for doing this. He has a whole bunch of merchandise that he got from the Cosmic Fantasy arcade back then. Notably, the two dinosaur creatures from an old classic game called Dino Land. They were the mascots of the arcade back then, and you could win them if you won certain prizes throughout the arcade. There was also tokens you could get. Really, really neat. Another thing that was interesting about this arcade back then is they would have Street Fighter tournaments. And Chris also scanned the original envelope, this is before the internet, where they'd send out the invitations to come to the tournaments. And I thought that was such a piece of history, and I thought it was so interesting, and I can't thank Chris enough for showing that stuff and kind of holding up a little bit of the history of this series. Another thing I definitely want to mention is there was a lot of manga of Cosmic Fantasy back in the day, and that was really interesting to see, but there was also something else, and I gotta thank my friend, the King of Smut 95, for lending me his Laserdisc of Cosmic Fantasy, the anime. Yes, there was an anime in 1994, and here is the Laserdisc. And another interesting thing is, William Chow, the King of Smut, did the subtitling on this Laserdisc back then, and he supplied me with the footage from his subtitles, and I was so happy to see this. And it's kind of an interesting take on Cosmic Fantasy. It's a bit of a retelling of the games. And back then, if there was a video game series, there was usually an anime that went along with it, and Cosmic Fantasy was no different. So I want to thank the King of Smut 95 for supplying that. I want to thank, again, Guy Gillionaire, and all of you guys for watching today. It's been such a pleasure of mine to show this long-forgotten RPG series from the PC Engine days. It really warms my heart. I'm so happy that I can talk about it. This is what the show is all about, is talking about games that have been forgotten at times, and this is one for the history books, that's for sure. So anyways, guys, until next time.